I was a country farm boy at the age of 16, so that I asked my mother if she would sign if I enlisted in the Air Force, the Air Cadet program. And of course, in motherly love, she said, I can't sign for it. So I spent the next 9 months of 1943 convincing her that I should join the Air Force. And she finally signed, and I joined the Army Air Force Corps. The Army Air Cadet program was, if you're good enough, you could graduate to be a pilot, navigator, and a bombardier, and graduate as a commissioned officer. So, with that story, I convinced her to sign, and we did that. And I became 18 March 31, 44, and I enlisted in October of 43, went to the New Cumberland Army base. After the sergeant gave his speech, he said, take your clothes off, all of them, including your shoes. I was shocked. And we all were in this room parading around naked. And that was a sight to see. And to add salt to the injuries, Nurse Wax was taking all of the information from the doctor and recording it. We spent 3 or 4 hours there. We went along a row of men behind the counter and handing out each element of clothing. We give them our size, and I hoped it would fit. But it mostly did. And then in the afternoon, we went through the drills of parade and marching and all that. We had the evening off, but we could go back to our barracks and lick our wounds of the day.
Was everybody there part of the Army Air Corps, or was it a mixture?
It was a mixture. There was only 16 air cadets, and the rest were draftees.
Army.
Yeah. Next day was Sunday. The family came in to pick up our civilian clothes and spend the last goodbyes. And we hope it wasn't the last one, but I didn't see my family then until 13 months. On Monday, we boarded the train, and the cadets were in a special car. The cadets went west, almost Pittsburgh, and there's a railroad down south. Keesler Air Base was right outside of Biloxi, Mississippi. And there we were scheduled to take basic training. Because I was in the Army, we took the regular Army basic training. 8 weeks of that. When I was there in April and May, and in Mississippi, it rains and it forgets to stop. My pants was wet from my knees down, and I had wet feet. After we were finished in basic training, I was scheduled to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, radio school. So I spent the next 5 months. I was also a radio mechanic, and I had to learn the mechanics and all the equipment or the operation of the radio. And we had 2 shifts. Morning shift, we learned the makeup of the radio. The afternoon shift was to learn how to operate it. To graduate, I had to make a radio from scratch that worked. But the afternoon session was the challenge for me as a radio operator. It was all done in International Morse code. The code was all done in phonics. And the definition of a phonics is movement or sound. So every letter in the alphabet was made up of 1 to 4 different dots and dashes. Each one had their own sound. And that's how I learned the International Code in sound. The numbers was made up of 5 and 6 digits of dots and dashes. When I graduated, I had to receive 20 words a minute through the headsets. I had to also send through the telegraph key 14 words a minute. So that was a challenge. I didn't learn that overnight.
How long was the school?
5 months. I got there in June, left in December. And I have to say that was the most pleasant summer that I ever spent. The medium temperature was 78, and you didn't have any humidity. It was just pleasant.
Especially if you got trained in Mississippi.
Yeah.
We had one accident. One plane had an accident with another one, and the pilot was able to land the plane in the street between the barracks. And that was good, but what happened? The one wing of the airplane caught a light post, swung around into a barracks, killed everybody in the plane and 3 in the barracks. So that was a disaster. In the 8 weeks of basic training, the last week was strictly for the cadets. They questioned us personal questions, problem solving, and aptitude and coordination. And
When you finished the radio school, then where did you go?
just to Biloxi.
Back to Biloxi.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you were real excited to be there again.
The last week was all airplanes for the cadets. The cadet program, as I understand, was eliminated then on, but every cadet forced out. Nobody, as I know of, made navigator, bombardier, or pilot. We were assigned to radio or aircraft mechanic. And then after that, I was scheduled to go to Yuma, Arizona to learn gunnery. And that's a desert. We didn't have any rain. The average rainfall in Yuma, I think it was 3/10 of an inch. But we did have dust storms. We started out with shotguns where we had a stationary and they would shoot these skeets, or we called them clay pigeons, and one first was stationary, and then we got on the back of a pickup and went around all these pillboxes, and they'd throw these skeets out. And then we moved up to the 50 caliber machine gun, and that was, the first one was on a post in the desert, and one GI would fire the gun and the other one feed the ammunition in. It targets about 500 yards. When I came off the range, I couldn't hear anything for a day and a half. I went to the sick bay, and, oh, you'll be all right in a day and a half or 2 days. But that is where the injury that I have right now started there.
Interesting.
We moved up the line to air-to-air targets. We were B-17, I was a radio operator in the B-17, and I fired the waste gun, and we had regular P-39 actual fighter planes giving a simulated attack on the bomber, and we would fire at this target. We had cameras on it. After we flew air to air, we flew air to ground, and there would be a target in the ground. We flew at 500 feet, and I could see where my bullets was hitting the sand, and that really gave me the value of learning. We learned high altitude flying. First day we were taught the positive and negative of the oxygen. We had a mock-up where there was 5 set in each side, and we had our oxygen mask on, and the instructor asked one to volunteer if he would volunteer and take the oxygen mask off, and we had a volunteer. So they took the oxygen mask off and told him to count. So he started to count, and they were reducing the oxygen in the capsule. And as he counted, it would get slower and weaker. All at once, he just sat there. And then he put his mask on, he woke up, and he didn't remember anything. Anytime we flew over in higher than 10,000 feet, we had to wear our oxygen mask. The highest I flew was 29,000 feet, and believe me, it's cold up there. And we had flying suits, sheep line flying suits. There was one problem that the system had a problem with. The pilots that was training new recruits were pilots that flew their missions in combat, and they're back teaching us. We had mixed fighter planes and bomber pilots, and every now and then we get a hotshot fighter pilot. And one day I fired the gun, and all at once I started to feel G-forces, and I had my parachute beside me. Went to reach out to get the parachute. I couldn't lift my hand off the floor. And I seen the horizon where the earth meets the sky. And
Was he supposed to do that to scare you? He was just showing off.
And he had that four-motor B-17 standing up on its wing.
Oh my gosh.
And
So now you knew radio, and then you knew gunnery.
we graduated. The dream of every Air Force person was to see those little wings. I got my wings and 2 stripes, and then I was shipped out to you would be assigned to a crew.
Where did they send you?
Lincoln, Nebraska. I was only there about a week, 10 days, and then I was put on shipping orders to go to Mitchell Field to be discharged. The base where I was in Lincoln, they were discharging people there, but I was too far away. They had to pay me mileage from Nebraska to Pennsylvania if I was discharged there. So they sent me to
New York.
New York.
So you're saying that by the time all of your training was through, the war was over?
Yeah. When I was put on shipping orders, that at the same time they dropped the A-bomb. Peace was signed 8 days later, I'm not sure. Yeah, I was there in Nebraska 3 months waiting to be discharged.
Because you didn't have a lot of points at that point.
And no, and this gentleman called his senator, and boy, in 5 days we were on the road of discharge.
Your story is fascinating because I've always wondered what the training was like. Was it as severe as they show in the movies? How do they pick this? What do you know in advance? All of those questions. and you've talked about them. Did you ever use your radio skills anywhere? Can you repair a radio today?
No. But to learn that, I had to learn basic electricity. And boy, that has helped me the rest of my life.